has never watched Criminal Minds? What kind of TV podcast is this? I don't know, might only get 1 star. This is unacceptable. He needs to watch Criminal Minds and watch some of Aisha. I'm just listening to Chris's episode, and this is ridiculous and unacceptable. Okay, bye. I love you.
Love you too. That was Brian's wife. So, little known fact, when you get married, you sign on to get yelled at by your wife for various things. You don't sign on to get yelled at by someone else's wife for TV shows.
I was just going to say, when my wife is mad at me, it's not that great. But when my wife is mad at Matt, it's delightful.
Well, that is the most unorthodox way to start TV, guys. I am, of course, Matt.
And I'm Brian.
And that was Anna. And she is mad because I've never seen Criminal Minds, which I'm sorry. Apparently, I'm supposed to watch all of the shows that you want me to watch.
So we were talking about this, and she doesn't necessarily mad that you hadn't seen every single episode, but she was like, the show's been on prime time for 15 years, and he hasn't seen one of it, and he's seen all of Smallville? Is what she said.
Okay, don't bring Smallville into this. This is not Smallville's fault, madam. Gosh, there's a lot of shows that people would be surprised that I haven't seen an episode of. People out there, you might be surprised I've never watched an episode of Game of Thrones. Actually, that's wrong. I have seen the pilot episode. I'm sorry. I watched 1 episode of Game of Thrones. But
so my wife sent me that voicemail, and then I sent it to Matt, but I said, don't listen to this until we start recording.
So that was fresh. This is how TV Guys starts off 2021, is with screaming and yelling and judgment.
Yeah. And if anyone else wants to send me a voicemail yelling at Matt, maybe we can make this a weekly segment of what did Matt get wrong.
I don't want this to be a weekly segment. This is not something that we should be indulging. All right, listen. We have a great episode, even though it got off on several wrong feet. We've got a great episode, and Brian is a big poopy face, so we can listen to him talk about... Okay, so if you were not here last week, and by not here, I don't know, it's not like we're in class. If you did not listen to last week's episode, we did a challenge at the end where we both challenged each other to watch an episode of something that we hadn't seen. So I have never watched an episode of... Actually, I had watched an episode of the IT Crowd. Someone showed me one a long time. But again, it was just one. So Brian picked an episode of IT Crowd. I picked an episode of Chuck. That, again, also Brian had seen 1 episode of that. So we've got 2 episodes now of these shows under our belts, but we're going to talk about the ones we assigned. So I gave Brian season 2. I can't remember what was the episode called. Do you remember?
Chuck versus Santa Claus. Which is weird because Santa Claus was not the villain, so, bad title.
All right, here's the thing about Chuck. You know how, Friends is, the one with. That's what they all are named, the one with, Chuck is always Chuck versus whatever. Gotcha. So the subject of the episode is whatever Chuck is versus. So that's where that came in.
All right, so I'm going to start with, like I said, I had seen maybe 1 episode of Chuck 10 years ago, so I was a little fuzzy on the premise. I'm going to give you the premise that I understand just from that episode. Tell me if I'm wrong. So Chuck seems to be involved with the CIA or something like that, but he doesn't seem capable enough to be an agent. He's someone important. He must know things. He seems like he's maybe a super brain guy like Psych or something. So he has to be protected by these agents, right? And he is pretending to date the girl, Agent Walker. Is that her name?
Yep.
And there's definitely tension where at least he seems to like her for real, even though they're supposed to be pretending. And then there's other guy who had all the finger bandages in this episode, who I don't know if there's a love triangle with them 3 or if he just doesn't like Chuck, but he seems to hate Chuck. And then everybody else, I guess his cover is working in this store, and everybody else kind of seems like a comedy, like the show Superstore.
I figured you'd make that connection, that it would probably be pretty, because when I was rewatching the episode, I'm like, this feels like what I've seen from Superstore.
So how'd I do on the premise just on that episode?
You're pretty close. So with Chuck, he he was working at the Buy More ahead of time, which, let's be honest, Buy More, they call it that, but it's really Best Buy, surrogate Best Buy.
Yeah.
And so he's working at the Buy More, and then this friend from college, or his college roommate, sends him this file, and it's all the government secrets, all the information from the NSA, all the information from the CIA, FBI. They were working on this project that combined all of these so that the departments would be able to work together a little bit better and have all the information in one central place. Well, Bryce steals that and sends it to Chuck in the form of several images, and it gets lodged into his brain as what's called the intersect. So he is like very smart, but it kind of turns his brain into a computer so that when he sees certain images, it flashes and it brings up all the things that are associated with that image.
Okay,
so
that comes in later in this episode too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the thing with Casey just doesn't like him because Casey is like a patriot, like a government worker who's killed people and is no nonsense. And he gets shoved into this terrible life of having to watch Chuck. And every week it's terrible because Chuck makes terrible things happen to him.
Yeah, I spent like half the episode wondering, is that Matthew Lillard? But I don't think it is.
No, it's Adam Baldwin from Firefly/Serenity.
Oh, okay.
He's been in a lot of like small stuff. Like he was in The Patriot. He was in Independence Day. But like these kind of small characters. But he was always like straight-laced sort of guy, you know.
Gotcha. So I'll spoil that. I love this episode. I thought it was really fun. It kind of makes me want to go back and watch some more of Chuck. But also, this would definitely have been on my top Christmas lists if I had seen it before we did that episode.
Yeah, after I watched it that time, I was like, I wish I would have watched it earlier because this was a great Christmas episode.
Yeah. I'm not sure what I would have bumped, but I would have bumped something. So right away, like the first shot, I was like, all right, we got Buster Bluth and the store manager from Elf. This is a fun episode. So they're walking in. I'm just kind of going to go through the episode. I jotted down some notes. So it's like the day before Christmas, and they're jacking up all their prices to get all the last minute shoppers, gonna gouge prices on them and everything. And then all of a sudden they're watching on the screen this car crash, or not a car crash. Yeah, the car act. They're watching on the
car
screen.
chase.
Yes, car chase. That's the word. I know how things are. And then the guy crashes into the store. And throughout the episode, for the first half of the episode, you think this guy is just like an inept, nervous guy, loser, who's just like, I don't know what to do, kind of thing. And so then the cops show up, and it's Michael Rooker, who's Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy, and Reginald VelJohnson, which, did you notice he's using his same name he used in Die Hard, Al Powell?
Oh, he is. Yeah. I mean, this episode really did have heavy Die Hard feelings because I mean they're all held hostage at Christmas time, even though the bad guy was incompetent.
But the thing is that they have Reginald VelJohnson, who I loved him, but they don't use him hardly at all. He has like two lines of dialogue, and he's just basically there for fan service. But like, I think they should have given him something to do, or else don't have him on there. That's like one of my only gripes.
Yeah, I as I rewatched it, I felt the same way because I remember when that episode came out, I was like, "Oh, this guy's in it! Awesome!" I was so excited, and then I didn't really know much about Michael Rooker at the time, so like I wasn't so excited to see him in there. And then like he gets the bulk of what was going on. I'm like, okay, I don't really care about this guy. And then the other guy was a dude from Galaxy Quest. If you ever saw that movie, he was one of the aliens in that. Oh,
okay, no, I never saw that one. That's why I'm not on the movie podcast. I'm on the TV podcast.
No problem.
Yeah, so then the spies, the Agent Walker and Band-Aid Finger Man, what's his name?
Casey.
I might just call him Band-Aid Finger Man. So they come into the store. They stay like there's like a secret entrance, which I'm guessing is part of the show, so they can get in and out without anyone knowing. And so they're like monitoring the whole thing, trying to keep Chuck safe. And they're doing this kind of this comedy of like I said, the guy doesn't know how to be a hostage taker. And then all of a sudden he sends out some hostages. He sends out Buster Bluth, whatever his character's name is, and he leaves. So then he has to get him out of the show for a while. And then the cops end up coming in. Michael Rooker's character comes in. All of a sudden he has one of those flashes that you talked about, and he sees and gets a watch, and he realizes that the cop is actually involved with something called Fulcrum, which I'm guessing is some kind of big bad guy organization.
Yep.
And so he thinks that it's just him, and then it turns out that the nervous guy was just playing a part, and they were both crashing the place to see who the CIA or whatever the agency is would protect. And so they figure out that it's Chuck. They're getting Chuck Like, we're going to get you, and we know you have all this information, so you're coming with us. Meanwhile, everybody else in the store, like the comedy troupe, it starts to turn into Home Alone. They start to plan out, I'm going to be here, you're going to be here, we're going to get him, we're going to use the stuff here. And that's kind of fun because like, once they start setting it up, like you know that's going to pay off at some point. You know they're going to do some Home Alone shenanigans and something's going to go down. See, yeah, because it kind of got like like I said, Superstore mixed with a cop show kind of feel. And then all of a sudden, they get him out of there because the bad guys get Chuck out of there by claiming that they're gonna get him. They release another hostage and they take him in an ambulance because everyone else still thinks the cop is one of the good guys. They get him away. They chase him out. Meanwhile, they do the Home Alone shenanigans with some fake snow and a hose thing and get the original fake nervous guy. They get him down. So then we catch up with Chuck and the original the bad cop, and the spies caught up with them. They're able to get Chuck out of there, and they're all running around this Christmas tree field. And then Agent Walker, she thinks that Chuck can't see them. She thinks that he went back, but he's like secretly watching from around some trees, and the guy's telling her like, hey, if you kill me, they're going to come back for Chuck. They're going to find you, and all this stuff's going to happen. And she just like shoots him in cold blood. And later on, she tells him, yeah, I arrested him. So I'm not sure what that's about, if that's about her protecting Chuck or, I mean, I doubt that it's a reveal where it's going to turn out that she's bad, but it does kind of seem like that kind of a thing. So
yeah, and to clarify on that too, like Chuck didn't hear all the things that the cop was saying because the cop, he kind of had this monologue too because Walker was going to take him in, it looked like, but he was just like, fine, take me in, and they'll break me out eventually. They're going to attack this compound. When they get me out, I will tell everyone everything about Chuck and about all his family. And so like she's realizing that he knows a secret that is going to ruin Chuck's life if he ever gets out. And then Chuck comes from around the corner and she still doesn't see him. And so then all of a sudden he's like, so go ahead, Agent Walker, take me in. So it looked to Chuck like he was surrendering and peaceful and all that sort of stuff, and that she just shoots him in cold blood. Which, I mean, she kind of does.
Yeah,
but
pretty much.
She has a different reason than he sees.
Yeah. I definitely want to go back and watch some more of Chuck now. I'll probably go back to the beginning. I don't know how much time I'll have between doing this podcast and being a dad and everything, but I'm definitely going to try to carve out some time to watch some Chuck, which would be good. Because it seems like I like the aspect of the comedy at the store. Plus, I like these kind of agent stuff. Like I love 24, and it seems like it's a little bit of that kind of thing mixed in with like the comedy. And then they got the love triangle, which seems like, and I'm just reading into this, but I'm sure that Chuck and Walker, there's something going on there.
Yeah, this was a great episode too to really flesh out those relationships. Like you saw with this episode, and you're kind of hitting on it. There's so many tones that the episode strikes, or the series strikes. It has great comedy. Every single episode has comedy in it. Every single episode has some good action in it.
Yeah.
But then there's also a lot of great emotional elements, and there's just really good chemistry. Like this was Zachary Levi or Levy, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. This was his like big breakout role, and he was just such a treasure. He was such a joy in this movie. He just was like, he's what makes the show. Yeah. And so he's a lot of fun to watch, and just his responses to everything. He's such an everyday down to earth sort of guy. Mm-hmm. And so this episode really brought that out. Like the thing with him and Sarah, of Sarah just feeling alone at Christmas because she's, she can't afford to have relationships. She can't afford to have friends. We see a little bit up until that point, the first season and the first half of this second season, we see like the only relationships that she has, and nothing really is positive like what she has with Chuck. Yeah. And so that's where that appeal starts to kick in, is he's real.
Yeah, I kind of understand her character from based on other shows where it is the kind of thing where with her line of work, and I'd imagine that if she gets close to anybody, she knows there's a good chance they're going to end up dead. Kind of like on Supernatural. But a little bit into the show, the brothers realize, hey, we have each other. If we get close to anybody else, they're going to end up dead, which pretty much happens in that show too.
Yeah, and I think this show made it 5 seasons, and there are some shows where it's like the will they, won't they is so excruciating by the end.
Yeah.
This one really does a good enough job where it toes the line of like, just when you're starting to maybe get tired of like the games, then they flip the relationship just a little bit and they do something else. Mm-hmm. And so they do a really good job of keeping you invested in the relationships. And Chuck just has great, like every single character, he has a great relationship with. Like his thing with Casey and him of just kind of being antagonists, even though they're on the same team, just because they're completely different people. Yeah. Or his best friend with Morgan. Morgan's a lot of fun, and just their friendship and how much he cares for Morgan, or how he cares for his sister and her fiance.
I couldn't tell if Morgan. I got the sense that him and Morgan were good friends, even though they don't really interact a ton in this episode. I don't know yet if Morgan knows about him being the spy guy or if he's in the dark as well. I'm not sure.
Well, I'll let you watch it.
All right, sounds good. I'm sure some of this is like episode 1 exposition stuff.
Yeah. It's right away. It's that sort of thing of he has to hide who he is, and so people don't know. So, what was the other thing? And then because it was a Christmas episode, so Christmas episodes are great where they leave off like a cliffhanger. This was a great cliffhanger to leave off on, of like just when Sarah and Chuck are starting to get close and they're having these moments, then something happens and you know that it's going to shove a wedge between the relationship for the coming episodes.
Yeah, because they had a nice moment earlier where he gives her this really personal family bracelet that I guess mom had gotten when his sister was born, I think is what it was, or something like that. And she's like, wait, what are you giving this to me for? You should save this for a real girlfriend. And he doesn't say it, but he can tell in his mind, he's like, I want you to be my real girlfriend. That's kind of like what he was emoting through the scene subtextually.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool moment. It's like, it's one episode in, I actually care about this, relationship. Which with some shows, they go through the entire series, and I'm like, I didn't really care.
I don't give a crap about you guys. I still don't buy in.
Like, Sam and Diane are overrated. There, I said it.
Okay, now I hope you get angry voicemails from people.
Hey, I love Cheers. I just don't like Sam and Diane.
In order for us to have angry voicemails for you, we have to have people listening that are over like 30, because that's like, what's Cheers? I don't understand.
I think it's still on Netflix. Watch it. It's really good.
It's pre-Frasier.
Yeah, it's the prequel to Frasier. Which is so crazy that Frasier was the spin-off character from that show.
Yeah, that's one of the few spin-offs that is just like really works. Mm-hmm. Better Call Saul, I think, is the best spin-off I can think of in TV history. But that's just me.
All right, so Matt, that's all I had. Tell me about the IT Crowd episode I had you watch?
The IT Crowd, what a unique show. So it's very British humor, and with British humor, it can be very hit or miss. And so as the show first starts, I'm watching it, and I was going to look up one of the characters' names. Not Chris O'Dowd. What was the other guy? What is his name?
Moss, the
Moss,
nerdy guy.
I thought so. Yeah, Moss. Okay, because that's gonna be their names. I don't remember Chris O'Dowd's character's name, and I can't pronounce Moss's Richard's last name in real life. So it's gonna be Chris O'Dowd and Moss, and then I can't remember what the girl was, but I don't have much to say about her in this episode. So, do you say Jen? Jenny?
Jen.
Okay. So Jen, she starts off, and the episode, like for the first half, I was like, okay, this is fine, but it really it hits its highlight in the last half. The setup for that last half was tremendous. I was rolling. It was so funny. But Jen gets asked out by this guy, and she gets asked out in front of Moss and Chris O'Dowd. And so this guy asked Jen to go to the theater with her, and they both interject themselves into it. And Moss is like, "Oh, I'd love to go," and Chris O'Dowd is like, "No, I don't want to go." And then he hears a certain actress is in it. Is like, "Oh, well, then count me in. I'm coming." And so when he leaves, Jen's so frustrated. She's like, "You just turned this from a date into a work outing," which the name of this episode is The Work Outing. So that's where that comes into play. So anyway, then as they're talking about it, it's like, oh, I don't know if it's a date, because he asked to borrow a magazine, and that magazine is either either women or gay men read this magazine. Those are the only demographics for it. So since he was wanting to read the magazine, he's like, he's got to be gay. So they both think he's gay. And she's like, no, he's not. It's a date. They get to the theater. The musical that they're going to see is titled Gay. That's the name. And it's like they're looking at this poster, and it's like the most over-the-top gay musical that you could possibly have.
Well, it says gay, a gay musical.
That's right. So it's just like beat the horse over the head of this is 100% a big red flag for her with being on a date with this guy. So they're in the theater, they're watching the show, and he's just loving, he's like laughing and really just buying into this show. And the jokes up to that point are like, oh, they're fine. I thought it was kind of funny how Moss at first was like, I don't want to be watching this. And then at intermission, he's like, I was pleasantly surprised. I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah.
So then at intermission, Moss and Chris O'Dowd go and they go to the bathroom, and there's a bathroom attendant there, and he's just kind of staring at him while they're trying to pee, and they just both felt so uncomfortable that they couldn't go to the bathroom in front of this guy. So they're like, we have to find another bathroom. We need to find somewhere we're not going to get watched. So they go, and Moss stumbles into a staff-only bathroom, and Chris O'Dowd finds the bathroom for those who are disabled. So he's going to the bathroom, he's got the door locked, and then he's done with it, and then he's trying to flush it, and he keeps pulling on the cord thing to flush it, and realizes he's yanking on the emergency cord to highlight if something happens for someone who's disabled. And so all of a sudden he starts hearing pounding on the door, and the people who work there are like, are you okay in there, sir? And he's just like, oh no. And so like they're banging on the door. He doesn't want to get caught that he's using the disabled person's bathroom and being a terrible person. And so they're shouting through the door, and they're like, what, are you okay? He's like, I'm disabled. And he says that like 9 times this episode. That's his go-to. Yeah. And so when they finally like break down the door and get in there, we see him laying on the floor. That was all that he could think to do. So he's laying on the floor. And like, oh, sir, what happened? I fell off the toilet. Oh, you fell off the toilet? Are you okay? I'm disabled. And so the manager's in there with him, and they all feel terrible for him. And so the manager's like, where's your wheelchair? Or do you have a wheelchair? He's like, yes. Well, where is it? Someone stole it. And so he's like, someone stole it? How did they get in here? And he starts crying, I don't know. I'm disabled.
He's using that high-pitched voice the whole time.
Yeah. And so because apparently disabled people to this guy are speaking a high-pitched voice. So they get him out of there. They carry him out. They're in the lobby, and while the show's still going on in the second act, he's sitting there because obviously at this point he can't stand up in front of all these people. So he's still sitting there. He's like, well, I think I'll be okay now. They're like, nope, we're going to stay with you until we get you out of here. And they happen to have like a spare wheelchair in the back. So they bring it out, and they put him into this wheelchair, and they're like, well, do you have any friends here? He's like, yeah, I came with company. You don't need to bring me home. He's like, oh, you came with company? Yeah. And then all these people, when they let out for the play, all of these wheelchair people come out. He's like, there they are. And so they bring him out. So this grouping, there's another group of handicapped individuals that had come. And so they're all getting loaded onto this van. And so Chris O'Dowd is sitting there on the little cart that's electronically raising him up into the van. And he's got just this pained look on his face while all of the employees from the theater are standing off to the side. They're waving and smiling, and they're like close to tears. And like, this guy, he's been through such an ordeal. So then the manager comes out right as soon as he's about to get on the van. And they're like, good news, I talked with the cast and they want to meet you. And so then the guy loading them all up in the van's like, well, everyone off. And so then they slowly lower Chris O'Dowd, and he still has that look on his face.
It's a long shot of like the staff like waving at him for really uncomfortable long length of time while he's just staring at them like pretending to be disabled.
So they bring him backstage. Meanwhile, Jen, her date, knew all of the cast. You know, he was friends with all of them. That's why he invited them in the first place, because he was able to get tickets for them for free. So Jen and her date go backstage, and they see all the people in the wheelchairs, including Chris O'Dowd. And Jen goes up and is like, oh, how long have you been disabled? She's just trying to come up with 10 years. And she's like, how did you get disabled? Acid. Oh, acid. What are the chances of that? 1 in 100. And so she's like, well, can I get you anything, any drink? So he's like, yeah, I'll take a whiskey. So she goes to the bar that's stocked for all of them. And behind the bar working is Moss, who got caught by other employees and like, don't mess around. You need to get in your uniform. So he's back behind the bar in uniform, and Jen's just like, how in the world how did these guys both get to this spot?
That's
with
the best
zero
part.
information.
Yeah.
So she orders a whiskey, and he's like, yes, ma'am, thank you. And he turns around and he tries to grab a glass out of like this stacked a bunch of glasses, and they all fall and crash on the floor. And he's obviously awkward, not knowing how to do this. It was such a great moment. Like, they set up all of this brilliantly, and it just kept paying. Just when you thought it was done paying off, this joke, it kept paying off.
Yeah, for sure. You can see why this is the episode that got me hooked on this show.
Oh my gosh, that episode, man, that was so well written. I love, like, this is how comedies need to be. Comedies, when they're able to, like, layer in the early acts a bunch of different things and then unravel all of those layers, like, layer by layer for the joke later, that's just genius. And so this had genius writing. And, of course, you know, Chris O'Dowd was the one who does the heavy lifting of this episode for that of the comedy, and it's just so funny, his reactions as he's trying to get out of it.
Yeah, overall, Moss is my favorite character, but he doesn't get nearly as much screen time in the show. So in this episode, you're right, Chris O'Dowd does definitely hold it together.
Thank you. I appreciate that you have gotten me to watch this episode. I am more enriched in my life.
This isn't like Chuck, where there's like a whole big series of things going on. Do you have any questions about the show in general that are not really?
I just have a feeling it's like your basic office comedy of these guys doing IT for wherever they're at.
Yeah.
And the shenanigans they get into, I guess.
Yeah, basically they're the IT guys, and the thing is that Jen got hired as their boss, but she doesn't know anything about computers, so she doesn't really do anything. Moss is like a genius, but socially awkward, and then Roy is just apathetic at his job.
Yeah, I definitely get that from those guys of, Moss having that little bit of like too smart for your own good to not have really any common sense at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one thing about this show that I think does really well, you see bits and pieces of the play, like you're saying, the gay musical, and you see it's ridiculous and all that kind of stuff, but they don't linger on it too long. That was the problem, I think, with, and I'm going to bring up a show Matt hates, the Gilmore Girls revival, because in that one, there's a gag where they're putting on Stars Hollow the musical, and the whole gag is that Lorelai is the only sane person who, like us, knows this thing is crazy, and everybody else is like, this is the greatest thing in the world, which that's a funny gag, but we also have to sit through like 20 full minutes of Stars Hollow the musical instead of 20 minutes of something we'd actually want to watch. Whereas this one, it just gives you little snippets, we get the joke, and then we move on.
Yeah. I think another one that would be like this but was really good because what they were watching was tremendous was Threat Level Midnight from The Office.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Where it's like you're watching this and the whole point is like how bad this is, but it's less about the audience reaction and more about just actually being able to watch the movie yourself. So it's a great fan service episode while also being just over the top ridiculous.
Well, in Threat Level Midnight, it's funny because it's all these characters that we recognize throughout the whole 7 years of the show at that point.
Yeah. I guess in contrast, sticking with The Office, the Sweeney Todd episode where they go see Andy on a play was a similar thing where it's like they spent so much time on that and watching the play wasn't that, even though I love Sweeney Todd, like I love the actual musical. Yeah. But it didn't land the way that it really should have.
Yeah. Well, you don't go to The Office to watch Sweeney Todd. You go to The Office to watch The Office.
Yes, that's true. Exactly.
Let's see. Do we have anything else for the IT crowd?
No, I'll have to watch a little bit more.
While we're on the IT crowd, I have a trivia question for us.
Hang on. I have one that combines both of ours.
Sweet. Go for it.
So there's a movie that has both, like one actor from both of our shows in it.
Oh.
So what movie, I can't say stars because neither of them starred in it. They were just both in it. And I just had thought of it while we were talking about it. But they both appear in a movie together.
I don't know this one. And then let's go back to our last week's trivia, which was about Friends, I believe.
Yep. Who was originally cast as Rachel? As Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it?
It's Ferris Bueller's sister, Jennifer Grey.
So I didn't see anything that supported that because the ones that I saw the two finalists. It was down to Tia Leone and then also Courtney Cox. Courtney Cox, they actually offered the role to her, but she ended up saying, no, I wanted to be Monica. I want to audition for Monica. So like, all right, we'll let you audition. We want to give you Rachel, but we'll let you audition. And then she did. And then just like, we really love what you did with that character. We're going to make you Monica. And so that's why Rachel was actually the last one cast, because they had other people that they thought were going to be in it.
Wait, so the answer was Courtney Cox?
Yeah, that was the answer I originally had. And I looked it up because you had said something else last week. I'm like, wait, do I have the wrong information? So I found multiple sources that say Courtney Cox. I found a couple that said Tia Leone.
Huh.
But
I thought it was Jennifer Grey. I thought that's what it was. Maybe I got misinformation. So I guess you could send your angry voicemails to me about getting that wrong.
It's all right. It's not like mine where I completely butchered it with the Stranger Things and John Ralphio one. But your question was like, it ended up working too, because you're like, well, what character did she then play in later episodes of Friends? Well, in all of the episodes of Friends, that character ended up playing Monica.
Yeah.
So
my favorite one is the one with Monica.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I guess there's an actor from the IT Crowd and the actor from Chuck that are together in a movie.
Correct. Yeah. Should I say both actors?
No, because I feel like that might give it up. All right, you want to tell them what we're doing next week?
Oh, next week we are going to – I know we're going to do a blast from the past. I know we're going to talk a lot about some of the older shows. So there's like classic TV. And then there, it's really evolved throughout the years. But one thing that has kind of changed over the years is theme songs. You don't see too many shows nowadays that have theme songs. Some of them, like Lost is like, blah, that's the theme song. So you have some shows nowadays that do have something or have a tag, but we're going to talk about what are our top 3 theme songs. So I'm sure we'll talk about some classic ones because that was like the golden age of theme songs.
Yeah, usually today it's like maybe like 10 seconds of hey la 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 la, and then here's the show.
Yes, that one's my favorite. I mean, there's some that like even though there's only like 20 seconds, like Stranger Things, like it's 20 seconds, but it's still like it's a really cool song beat that they've got for those 10, 15 seconds that it plays. It's a cool tag. So
tune in next week to hear our theme songs. You can follow us on Twitter at TVGuys1. We're on Facebook. Email at tvguyspodcast.com. And if you had fun today with us giving each other assignments, let us know so we can do it again and I can make Matt watch Gilmore Girls.
I know. What was the other show? Because we were talking and there was another show is like, you would want me to watch that. Oh, maybe it's Criminal Minds. That one. Your wife can bail me out of having to watch Gilmore Girls and instead I can watch an episode of Criminal Minds so I don't have to get any more angry voicemails from her.
It's true. If we do go that route, I'll let Anna pick the episode for you.
Oh, that's so nice of you. What a good husband you are.
Pretty much.
Well, until next time, happy 2021. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.